Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to take you through some of my recent reads, give a brief summary of the books, and some of my thoughts on them. There will be spoilers throughout, so if you want to avoid hearing about any of these books, I'll have the sections timestamped so that you can skip ahead. I've got an assortment of genres here, but as you can see, I tend to lean towards thriller and mystery books. If you've watched any of my other videos, especially my week-long journaling videos, I tend to always have a mystery book in rotation. If some of the colors in these book covers look off to you, you would be correct. I'm always in a fight with my printer lately. I mean, it's an ancient relic at this point, and most recently, it's just refusing to use any black ink, so we are working with some very vibrant book covers today. Okay, so first up is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is a sci-fi dystopian novel. We read this for book club. In this book, an unnamed female narrator navigates life on a mysterious island where objects regularly disappear. At times, simple objects like ribbons or hats, and sometimes much more serious things, like the disappearance of calendars, which plunges the island into permanent winter, and near the end of the book, legs, arms, and other body parts disappear. These things are disappeared by the titular Memory Police, a dangerous police force that has taken over the island and who are in charge of making sure that these disappeared items are forgotten. Most people on the island do easily forget these things. For most of them, the only thing that remains afterwards is just this foggy feeling that something has changed and that they're missing knowledge that they used to have. However, our main character is a novelist, and early on in the book, she realizes that her editor, R, actually isn't affected by the disappearances. He can still remember everything very clearly, and he has to pretend that he's forgetting things when he really isn't. As the Memory Police begin to crack down on the island and start to arrest people who were not affected by the disappearances, the main character makes a decision to hide her editor in a secret room beneath her floorboards. This was a really riveting read and truly a very sad book. I've already given the spoiler warning, so I'll just let you know now. It does not end well for our characters. As her body disappears, the main character gradually loses the ability to walk, feel, and eventually see and speak, even as R tries to remind her that she still has her body and she's perfectly healthy. That's the weird thing about the disappearances. The items don't actually vanish into thin air or something. The people just lose the ability to recognize or remember them. The book ends with essentially what I can only describe as the protagonist's soul floating in the room she's hidden R in, looking at her body from above, and watching R say goodbye to her and leave the room. It's a truly harrowing book, but I really enjoyed it and I have never read anything like it, so it is in the top spot today. Next up is Runner 13 by Amy McCulloch. I received a review copy of this book. This is the third book by this author that I've read, and it follows a pretty similar setting to her other two. Runner 13 takes place during an ultramarathon in the Sahara Desert, organized by this insane, sadistic race director who's basically always trying to push his runners to the absolute limit. The main character, Adrienne, has only agreed to participate in the race because she suspects that the race director, Boons, knows something about the driver that almost killed her son in a hit-and-run accident 7 years ago. But in order to get an answer from him, she has to finish his 250-mile race through the desert. Of course, there are B-plots running rampant throughout the book. We change POVs quite often and meet other characters who have their own reasons for being at the race, and there is, as always, a murder or two during the course of the marathon. I love thrillers like this. I love when they're set in isolated locations. I love when side characters are getting picked off one by one. It's like the perfect book setup for me. I mainly listen to this book when I'm reading something that's multiple POVs. It really helps me to hear the different narrators, and I think it can bring a lot of personality to characters that you don't get to spend as much time with if you were reading a book from solely their perspective. I loved it, but it didn't take the top spot because I liked Amy's book Breathless more, which is set on an Arctic cruise, but I learned a lot about ultramarathons, which is really cool, and it made me both want to run one and also never want to run again, period. Next is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, locked room thriller right up my alley. This takes place inside an old house on a tiny island that is completely cut off from the coast when the tide comes in. What a setting! The entire Darker family has gathered on the island for Nana's 80th birthday. They've been avoiding each other for years, and the reasons why will all come to a head after Nana is found dead in the middle of the night. The main character, Daisy Darker, is kind of like the black sheep of the family. Everyone seems to have an issue with her, and she hints that it's because of something that she did years ago as a child that we will gradually find out more about. This was pretty on par with Runner 13 for me. I liked the setting more. However, I went back and forth on how much I liked the twist. If you know the twist, you know. I feel like you either love it or hate it. I did like it for the most part. However, it left a lot of questions unanswered. I won't say what it is here, but it's one of those. It's definitely like a polarizing twist. Next up is When All Is Said by Anne Griffin. This is another book club read. The main character is an old Irish man named Maurice. He's sitting at a hotel bar, ordering drinks, and throughout the night, he speaks directly to the reader, telling us about a different person in his life with each drink that he orders. This is exceptionally well written. You know exactly who Maurice is. You hear about every facet of his life and every moment that has brought him to where he is right now. You come to really care about him, and it feels like you're really sitting next to him at the bar as he recounts his entire life. I listened to this audiobook and it was great. It's narrated by Niall Buggy, who brings so much life to the character and has the perfect voice for the story. This was our book club book for March, so the weather was just getting nice again, and I was listening to this on walks in the park. It was amazing. The only reason this isn't higher is because it's like typically not a genre I read, but I loved it all the same. Next is the third Crescent City book by Sarah J. Maas. Calling this a recent read is kind of a cheat because it took me over a year to read it and I just finished it this last week. Honestly, not too much to say about it. It's definitely too long. Out of all of her series, my favorite is ACOTAR. I think again, that's just me sometimes preferring more fantastical settings over modern ones, and Crescent City definitely takes a more modern approach to the fantasy genre. But if you've read it, you know that the ACOTAR and Crescent City worlds have now been connected. At first this was pretty exciting, but now I think because of like the crazy lore implications that go along with that, and Crescent City's lore is so complicated at points, now I feel like I need someone to build a flow chart for me to understand everything about the history of the universe that we're in. I'm super excited for the next ACOTAR book, but I hope it's truly an ACOTAR book and doesn't end up being a full crossover between ACOTAR and Crescent City. It's kind of hard to tell based off the ending of this book how much the worlds are going to come together in the future, so we'll see. It could either be much more connected or we could be totally cut off for the time being. Next is The Golden Spoon by Jessie Maxwell. This is like if a murder mystery took place during the filming of The Great British Bake Off. The setting is actually an American baking competition reality show blend. I feel like because setting it in the UK would have been way too close a comparison to the real British Bake Off. Very classic setup, a body is discovered and it all goes downhill from there. I listened to this book and it had some of the most bizarre audiobook performances I've ever heard. I was really excited at first because it was a full cast, and then the choices and delivery that were being made me feel like I was an alien touching down on Earth for the first time and struggling to comprehend the English language. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just weird at some points. Book-wise, I love the setting. I like the setup. I don't think the murder was very compelling, unfortunately, and all of the twist reveals were kind of like, Like a big twist is that one of the competitors actually knew the host of the show when they were kids, but she hasn't even come back to the show with like a malicious intent. She's just like, hey, here I am. And then it turns out she's the half sister of the host, so she takes ownership of the mansion that the show is filmed in. It's like, yay. I don't know. It was fine. It's a very safe halfway point for this list. It was, it's fine. It was fine. Next is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Adam and Amelia are a married couple who've been having some problems in their marriage, so they take a weekend away to Scotland, hoping it'll help their relationship, and spoiler, it doesn't. They're plagued by a mysterious presence at the house they're staying in, they're keeping secrets from each other, all the typical stuff. This isn't ranked high for me because I found the characters very unlikable. Every time we switched POVs, I was just like, okay, you guys hate each other. I don't even know why we're trying to stay in this marriage. And the big twist is that when you think we're stepping back in time and hearing Amelia's old letters she wrote about Adam when they first got together, we're actually hearing from Adam's first wife, who he cheated on Amelia with and who is actually the person who invited them to Scotland and is plaguing them on their trip. Also, Adam has face blindness, so throughout the book, we're reminded of the fact that he can't recognize faces. And that's kind of used to create suspense, but then again, being reminded of it constantly just means it turns into a Chekhov's gun. So you know at one point it's going to be used for the twist, and it is, but it's still just kind of eh. That's the best way I can describe the whole book. It was just kind of eh. The next book is Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. When a hostage situation is broadcast on the London news, Camilla never expects to see that the man involved in it is her husband, Luke. They bring her to the warehouse where the situation is still ongoing, but Luke manages to kill his hostages and escape. The book then follows Camilla and the hostage negotiator over the next few years as they try to find Luke, but also move forward with their lives. The first few scenes of this book with the hostage situation happening in real time were great. It was super tense, action-packed, really had me engaged, wondering what was going to happen. I was actually expecting this to be much more of the book. I thought maybe the hostage situation would go on for a few days. And the reason I ranked it so low is because of this huge time jump that happens after Luke escapes. I don't love time jumps, I like staying in the action, but I understand why it had to happen for this story. The thing is that at times the book follows the hostage negotiator to therapy, and we get full chapters of him at therapy talking about his relationship with his ex-wife, which completely takes me out. Like, I'd rather follow Camilla. You know, she starts to get mysterious texts years afterwards that she suspects are Luke, and she's trying to follow his trail, and the negotiator is sitting in therapy talking about how his ex-wife loves to foster cats. Like, okay. I think, honestly, in the end, I did like this more than Rock, Paper, Scissors, and definitely much more than the next book in the list, but it just fell flat for me in some spots. Next is I Did Warn Her by Sean Gilbert. This is another advanced review copy that I got. This is a locked room thriller set on a billionaire's yacht told through the POVs of several of the female crew members on board. A crew member turns up dead the night of a big party on the yacht and everyone is pointing the finger at someone else. It doesn't help that every stewardess on board is tall, thin, blonde, described as, quote, model pretty, which leads the guests to mix them up constantly, and also makes it hard to believe what people have seen. You could think you saw one stewardess walking down the hallway towards the body, but there's a good chance it was someone else. It opens with one of my favorite mystery tropes, which is the discovery of the body, but we get little to no identifying features, and then we jump back in time several days. It's a fun way to set the stage before all the action truly begins, but I do think that the suspense in this book quickly falls off after this. But it's just because the girls were extremely catty to each other, almost ridiculously so. It's just so hard to believe that any of them are real people, and it's even harder to distinguish them from one another because they all act exactly the same. And that lack of connection to the character makes the murder victim's identity reveal very weak, the murderer reveal weak, honestly most of the character motivations very weak. It's just hard to be invested in anyone or truly root for anybody because they just don't feel real. I would say it hits its stride about 30% in, and then it really flies. There's a lot of fun scenes around the time of the party and the immediate fallout after the discovery of the body. But there are several twists near the end that just don't land for me because it's like this cartoonishly evil B-plot that is tough to take seriously. And the reveal of the murderer, it just doesn't connect in my opinion. Like, we find out that the yacht owner is sinking it for insurance reasons and he is colluding with the captain, and it's this whole thing with his mom, and it's like, okay, I don't really care about your motivations right now. I'm sorry. I feel like I really went in on this, and I just want to say I'm currently listening to Sean Gilbert's debut novel, She Started It, and I'm really enjoying it. So please don't interpret this as an attack on Sean, because obviously this is a situation of just enjoying one book way more than the other. Maybe if I had listened to the audiobook for this one, it would have been better. After I read it, I saw a bunch of reviews online saying about how they preferred the audiobook, so that might have just been on me. However, for my next book, Fair Play by Louise Hegarty, I did listen to it, and I really didn't like it. Trigger warning for discussions of side. The most important thing to know about this book is that it's basically split into two books happening simultaneously. We start with the, quote, real book, which tells the story of Abigail, a young woman who's rented out a fancy Airbnb to celebrate her brother Benjamin's birthday. It's New Year's Eve, and she's invited a group of friends over, and they're going to have a jazz-age murder mystery birthday party. The morning after the party, Ben is found dead in his room. Once we find the body, the book splits, and we get two narratives post-murder. The first continues the real book, and it's Abigail trying to figure out what happened to Benjamin and dealing with all of the terrible admin things you have to do after someone passes, like funeral planning and navigating telling family and friends. The second book is what seems to be a Poirot reference. We are suddenly transported into the same manor home but in the 1920s, and all the characters we've already met, Abigail and Benjamin's friends, assume the typical roles we encounter in a detective novel. One is a gardener, one is a doctor, one is a rich heiress, so on and so forth. As the book progresses, we switch back and forth between Abigail in present day and Abigail and the detective in the fake novel, trying to solve Benjamin's murder. I'm going to go ahead and tell you exactly what happened so you don't take any of your time actually reading this book. At first glance, I know this concept sounds really interesting. You should know that me telling you about the fake detective novel is something that the summary on Goodreads and on Amazon is not going to tell you. I was very surprised when the time period changed and the detective was introduced, but I thought it was fun, so I let it roll. Unfortunately, what follows this reveal is not fun and it's not a good time. It turns out in present day, we never find out what happened to Benjamin. It's ruled as a suicide, and Abigail and the rest of his friends never get any answers, and she is consumed by grief on every page. In the detective novel, it runs through all the common tropes and ends with the detective pulling everyone into the living room, just like Poirot. He lays out all the evidence and he names the murderer, but every time he names the murderer, he realizes he's got it wrong, and the scene resets and he does the whole thing over again and accuses someone else, and the scene repeats until he's accused everyone in the group, realizes that none of them seem right, and the detective novel ends in uncertainty just like the real book. This book was not advertised in this way. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started it. It read exactly like a typical thriller book that you encounter all the time now, like a Lucy Foley novel. I had no idea where we were going until it was way too late. I felt a little duped by this. It just feels really gimmicky. The characters are exceptionally flat in both the detective and the real novel. And even though the author went through all the trouble of inventing this kind of meta murder mystery book, it didn't feel like they really had anything to say or any resolution whatsoever. I know this sounds harsh, this is just how I feel. I was really, really confused by it as a whole, and it just leaves you feeling kind of shitty, okay? That's it. On to the next, Summer in the City by Alex Astor. Before we get started on this, I am not a contemporary romance fan, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I love romance in my books, but I am not sure that I love my books to be about romance. I'm able to get more invested when the romance is happening amongst a larger plot. Actually, for example, there is a kind of love story that develops throughout The Memory Police, and that's happening in conjunction with the rest of the plot, and it makes it feel very human and very alive. Whereas this book did not feel like it was happening in reality at any point. Elle is a young screenwriter who went to college in New York City. She moves back for one summer on assignment to write a screenplay set in the city and ends up moving into an apartment next to Parker Warren, a billionaire tech CEO who she made out with at a party the last time she was in the city and who she secretly hated for years because of it. They have a PR relationship. It benefits Parker's image ahead of him selling his company, and in return, he takes Elle all over the city to the places that are featured in her screenplay. It's kind of advertised as enemies to lovers, which I don't see. First of all, enemies to lovers is already tough to pull off in a contemporary romance. It's definitely more for fantasy in my opinion. Also, Parker is just not that mean or rude. He's just like rich and has money and he's kind of standoffish, and Elle is weird about money because of stuff with her dad. They're both just empty characters. I don't really feel any tension or chemistry between them. Again, it might just be me not being a contemporary romance reader. This was a book club pick, and the rest of the club was also kind of like on it. I know for some people that this is a perfect book, and that's fine. It's just not for me. It just didn't feel like it was happening in the real world, which I feel like was only made more of an issue by the fact that Alex Astor wasn't describing anything. Like at one point, Elle is watching a movie and really enjoying it, but she doesn't say what the title is or describe anything going on in the movie or what she likes about it. In another scene, she orders a drink that she says someone else told her to order, and she doesn't name the drink or what it's made of or how it tastes, just that she likes it. There's so many instances in the book where Elle likes something but just doesn't describe what she's seeing or feeling, and it like totally disconnects me from the action. I don't know. Lastly, we have The Woman in Suite 11 by Ruth Ware. This is at the bottom of the list because I'm actually currently still reading it. It is the sequel to The Woman in Cabin 10. I have read a bunch of Ruth Ware's books, possibly all of her stuff, missing maybe one or two. The Woman in Cabin 10, I did not like. So going into this, I knew probably I wouldn't like it, but I love listening to her stuff in audiobook, and I was like, I'll give it another try. The reason I didn't like it is because the main character, Lo, she's just a pushover. There's no way to describe her. She just is kind of like an main character. Ruth Ware has written some great female main characters, but for some reason, Lo, things just happen to her. It's incredibly hard for her to like take action from what I remember from The Woman in Cabin 10. So I was actually kind of confused that this was chosen to be like a sequel. My conspiracy theory is that because The Woman in Cabin 10 is being made into a movie with Keira Knightley, they were like, hey, you should write a sequel so that if this movie goes well, we can have another movie to make. That's my conspiracy. But when you look at the rest of her stuff, like, she has some great books that would be amazing as movies. Like, I would love to see The Lying Game as a movie. But for some reason they went for this. I don't know. So I'm still reading it. I'm like 40% of the way in. It's moving very slowly, but I'm going to finish it. We'll see how it turns out, but that's where I'm at right now. That's why it's at the bottom of the list, because I can't really give a full review of it right now. Okay, those are all of my recent reads. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope I can cut all of my rambling down to time. From what I've described here, if you have any books that you think I'd enjoy, please let me know. As you can probably tell, my favorite are murder mysteries, especially ones that happen within a small circle of people that have a lot of drama with each other in the past. Those are the best. So if you know any of those, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. The thing is that at times the book follows the hostage negotiator. Oh my god, I can't say that word. The thing is that at times the book follows the hostage. No, there's no way I can say this. Hostage negotiator. What's his name?